What'd you say?
What were they doing?
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes.
That was the initial statement from an anonymous witness who called 911 in the town of Moab, Utah, in the scorching heat of August 2021. As police approached the white van parked on the side of the road, a body cam captured the image of a young woman with teary eyes, constantly wiping away tears and taking all the blame. "I'm the one who caused trouble. I'm sorry," she said, while her boyfriend, a cool and reserved young man of the same age, stood next to her, barely showing any emotion. The girl was Gabby Petito, 22, a travel blogger who was traveling across the U.S. in a van with her boyfriend Brian Laundrie. On social media, they were the dream couple. Photos filled with majestic nature, bright smiles, and the inspirational hashtag #VanLifeNumberSign. But behind the Instagram filters and carefully edited vlogs, something was breaking. The atmosphere was getting more tense by the day, and within weeks of that video, the entire country would be shocked by the unexpected turn of events. Subscribe now to join us as we unravel the mystery of a case that shocked the nation. A true story full of surprises, drama, and haunting. In the summer of 2021, Gabby Petito and her boyfriend Brian Laundrie began a journey across the United States in a white van from Florida. On social media, they shared their dreamy, nomadic life with photos in national parks, forests, and deserts in the West. Those moments quickly attracted a large number of followers, turning Gabby into a new symbol of the free and wild van life lifestyle. However, that freedom could not hide the increasingly obvious cracks between the two. The small space, the pressure of constant travel, and the differences in personalities seemed to gradually strain the relationship. On August 12th in Moab, Utah, a passerby reported to the police that a man was violently abusing his girlfriend in the middle of the street. When the police approached, Gabby said she was the one who caused the trouble because she was stressed, while Brian calmly insisted that they had just had a small argument. After talking, the police suggested that they temporarily sleep separately for a night to cool off, then let them continue their journey. In the following weeks, Gabby continued to appear on Instagram, but something was different. Her photos became less frequent. Her smiles became more forced. Notably, her messages to her mother began to become erratic, using strange words as if the sender was no longer Gabby herself. On August 25th, she posted her last photo, taken in Grand Teton, Wyoming, and then went completely silent. Notably, Brian returned to Florida. Remarkably, he returned alone, driving the car that had belonged to both of them, but did not contact Gabby's family or report anything. Any questions from the Petito family fell on deaf ears. Brian refused to provide information, his family also avoided it, and only responded through their lawyer. That attitude turned Gabby's family's anxiety into real fear. By September 11th, they officially reported Gabby missing to the police. The news spread quickly on social media, where thousands of people who had followed her journey began to piece together the facts. During the search, a YouTuber family accidentally filmed a white van parked on the edge of the Grand Teton forest, a video that would later become a turning point in the investigation. As time passed, Brian remained uncooperative. On September 13, he suddenly left the house without a trace. It was only when clues were gradually revealed that people were startled to realize behind the beautiful photos was a suffocating relationship and silent distress signals. But no one listened soon enough. A trip that was expected to be the beginning of a future ended up leading to an unexpected, heartbreaking ending. On September 11th, 2021, as the United States was preparing for the 20th anniversary of 9/11, the Petito family in New York quietly entered their own crisis. For more than 2 weeks, they had not been able to contact Gabby, something that had never happened before. The girl who was close to her mother had lost contact with her, and the family felt uneasy, especially when recent messages from Gabby suddenly became curt and distant, as if written by someone else. They immediately reported Gabby missing to the Suffolk County Police Department, requesting emergency assistance. Authorities quickly expanded their coordination from the Northport Police Department in Florida, where Gabby had lived with her boyfriend, to Wyoming, the last location on her social media account. Meanwhile, the media began to get involved, and a series of articles, videos, and comments spread quickly across digital platforms. The online community, especially those who had followed Gabby's nomadic journey, became a giant tracking network. They searched through each post, each story, and began to notice strange gaps. A video accidentally posted by a YouTuber family on an RV trip attracted special attention. In the video, they accidentally recorded the image of a white van lying still in the middle of the Grand Teton forest, a perfect match for the vehicle that appeared on Gabby's Instagram page. Based on the coordinates from the clip, the FBI and the Forest Service narrowed down the area of Spread Creek, the place where the vehicle was believed to be the last stop. On September 19, they deployed a search team including forensic experts, dogs, and drones to scan every piece of wilderness. By late afternoon, a team had discovered a lightly disturbed area of land, and soon after, a female body, loosely covered in a grassy field strewn with rocks. Although no official conclusion had been reached, the initial clues, from the clothing to the figure to the tattoos, all raised a grim suspicion. This could be Gabby Petito. Authorities sealed off the scene and began an autopsy in silence, paying close attention to every detail. There was no sign of natural disaster or the presence of wild animals, just an eerie silence and evidence of human intervention. News of the body was an immediate sensation. As authorities continued DNA testing and forensics, the nation's attention was drawn to the case. From an online dream travel story, Gabby's journey had now entered its final chapter, painful and unexpected. In the twilight of the Grand Teton, the area where the body was found was immediately cordoned off. The forensic team began to carefully comb the scene. There was no obvious trail leading in, no tire tracks or signs of a struggle, just a clearing, sparsely grassed and eerily quiet, as if time had stood still for weeks. The victim's body was found face down, the upper body buried shallowly in the gravelly soil, with no heavy objects or obstructions to conceal it. This was not a burial, but a hasty, almost desperate concealment. Nearby, the authorities collected a number of personal items, a bracelet, some jewelry, and a notebook with water-stained ink. These items helped to identify the victim and also to reconstruct the victim's final moments. The forensic report released later concluded that the victim had died from strangulation, with an estimated time of death of 3 to 4 weeks before being found. There were no knife wounds nor any defensive injuries, suggesting that the crime had occurred very quickly in a situation where the victim had no time to react. The fact that the body was poorly concealed and there were no signs of third-party intervention led investigators to a clear hypothesis. The perpetrator was not a stranger, and the act may have stemmed from a moment of loss of control between two acquaintances. After the body was identified as Gabby Petito, the FBI quickly shifted its focus from the search to the criminal investigation. All data, evidence, and witnesses were reviewed from the beginning, and the most prominent name in the file was none other than Brian Laundrie, the only boyfriend who accompanied Gabby on the journey across the United States. Not only was Brian the last person known to be with Gabby, but he was also the only one who returned without providing any explanation. He had been in Florida since early September, but for the next 10 days, when Gabby was reported missing, Brian chose to remain silent. His family also avoided contact with the investigation agency and agreed to exchange information only through a lawyer. That closed-off attitude made the public wonder. On September 13th, while all the attention was focused on Brian, the family suddenly reported that he had left the house in the morning and had not returned. They said that Brian had said he was going to walk into the nearby Carlton Nature Reserve, a wild, flooded, and complex terrain. The loss of a key figure in the case caused public outrage. Many people suspected that the Laundrie family knew in advance and deliberately let him escape. While the search team waded through streams and forests in Florida to track down Brian, the FBI focused on analyzing evidence from the van. The results of the examination discovered many important details: tiny bloodstains, a few long hairs matching Gabby's, and especially the computer hard drive and notebook, although partially damaged by water. Using dash cams and security footage from the Grand Teton area, the FBI was able to reconstruct the van's route during the pivotal time period. Several frames showed the van stopping at what would later be identified as the crime scene, but there was no report from the owner. That only added to the unusual nature of Brian's behavior. Another twist came when the FBI discovered that a bank card in Gabby's name had been used at an ATM in Florida after her suspected death. While not enough to warrant murder charges, the act was a crime. A federal arrest warrant was immediately issued, a tactic often used to pressure an indirect suspect. But Brian was nowhere to be found. Weeks passed, and rescue teams with dogs, drones, and divers found no clear trace. Meanwhile, the FBI's technical analysis team expanded the investigation, retrieving GPS data from electronic devices, extracting text messages from Gabby's phone, and especially reprocessing the notebook they had collected. As each page dried, they discovered a handwritten confession. "I did it. I can't live without her." On October 20th, 2021, the search finally yielded results. Near a high ground in the Carlton Reserve, which had been flooded by heavy rains, the investigation team discovered a backpack containing personal belongings. Not far away, a partially decomposed body was found. Dental and DNA tests confirmed it was Brian Laundrie. Cause of death: self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Although the case never had a formal trial, the FBI released the entire investigative file afterward, with physical evidence, handwritten diaries, digital data, and behavior before and after the incident. They concluded that Brian was directly responsible for Gabby's death. The Gabby Petito case ended not with a verdict from the court, but with the undeniable truth in the investigation file. It also left a profound message. Silence, if not listened to and investigated thoroughly, can hide a tragedy. In the digital world, where beautiful photos can obscure reality, the data and the truth will always be there, if only someone is patient enough to find it. When the FBI's investigation results were officially announced in early 2022, many hoped for a court hearing to clarify the entire course of the case, but the death of Brian Laundrie prevented any legal proceedings from continuing along the traditional path. With no defendant to prosecute, the justice system was forced to close the case as a concluded investigation instead of a trial and sentencing. At a press conference held by the FBI, the investigation agency representative presented the full chain of evidence that had been collected, from traces at the scene, indirect statements, to electronic data related to the suspect's itinerary and behavior. Forensic experts confirmed that no one other than Brian had ever been present at the location where Gabby was found. The use of her bank account after her death, along with personal notes acknowledging responsibility, is the basis for the conclusion. This was not an accident or the actions of a third party. The community was shocked by an ending without judgment, without questioning, without explanation. What Brian left behind in form was just a few notes, but it suggested a simmering tragedy that many people believe began a long time ago, from small arguments to growing silence. The Petito family, despite their heartache, still showed a strong spirit. Instead of stopping at the loss, they chose to continue the journey to demand justice for other victims. The organization, the Gabby Petito Foundation, was established with the goal of supporting people trapped in unhealthy relationships, where warning signs are often ignored or overlooked. Gabby's case has prompted a broader discussion about community responsibility, the legal aid system, and the role of social media in detecting and exposing potential threats. Many lawmakers have called for early response procedures when reporting violence in relationships, especially when evidence is provided via camera or digital platforms. Although there was no verdict in the courtroom, the case has left a deep mark on the public, because sometimes it is the unanimous voice of society, through each article, clip, conversation, that becomes a real court of justice, where the voice of the victim is heard even when they are no longer present. Gabby Petito's death is not only a personal tragedy, but also reflects a painful gap in the way society views seemingly normal relationships. A young girl who once carried the desire to explore, experience, and share with the world, was ultimately deprived of her voice when her journey was still unfinished. What makes many people most troubled is not that the incident happened too quickly, but that it happened after a series of signals had appeared, from changes on social networks to avoidance in communication and unusual expressions in the behavior of the person accompanying her. All of these things have been seen, but no one is sure if they really understood them correctly. Since the incident, many organizations and communities have re-examined the way they approach relationships that show signs of breaking down. The conversation has expanded beyond personal relationships to include legal, technological, and educational issues. Social media platforms are rolling out warning features, while victim support organizations are getting more funding to act quickly. Gabby is no longer here, but if her story helps someone avoid danger, if it makes a friend or family member notice the smallest changes, that will be her most vivid legacy. And what about you? If you were a witness, what would you do if you saw something strange growing in a relationship that seemed so peaceful?